So we'll continue with the pep talk, like I said. Yeah, lot of issues. Um, yeah, we'll start with this topic, right of reputation versus right to dignity. So essentially, we're looking at a legal conflict and a sort of moral conflict as well with respect to certain landmark cases and a recent defamation suit that has been filed. So just go through whatever is here in 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll start with the explanations. Okay. Um, I assume you guys have gone through it, only like skimmed through it. Okay. So recently, like it stated, there was this criminal defamation suit filed by a former union minister against a journalist. This particular journalist had accused this union minister of sexual harassment, and the essential argument was, I'm sorry for the echo, like kept it on my phone for the chat box. The essential argument was that the minister hadn't committed such acts, and therefore it was a lie. And if you guys don't know, defamation, uh, the strongest defense against defamation is truth, right? So, what is defamation? In essence, it is harming the character of a person in a way that is very detrimental to his identity and to his character, right? The biggest defense to defamation is truth. So you can file a defamation case as soon as it is not the truth. So that is what this union minister sort of alleged, that she was not speaking the truth. Now, consideration by the court. What did the court sort of look into when they were going through in this particular case? The court took consideration of the systematic abuse at the workplace due to the lack of mechanism to redress the grievance of sexual harassment at the time of the incident of sexual harassment against the accused journalist took place. It was prior to the issuance of the Vishaka guidelines by the Supreme Court and the enactment of the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. So, a little background on what this is if you don't know what the Vishaka case is. Does anyone know what the Vishaka case is? Or where the Vishaka guidelines came from? Anyone? Anyone else? Please type it out in the chat box if you like want to take a shot. All right. Cool. Okay. So essentially, um, there was this particular woman, a social worker by the name of Bhanwari Devi, and she was working with an NGO who were trying to stop child marriages in her village, right? So there was this very young kid who was getting married off. I believe her age was around like 2 years old, and she was getting married off by this group of upper caste men, right? So they were Gujjars, I believe, and they were marrying off this 2-year-old kid. And Bhanwari Devi, she stepped in and she tried to sort of stop the marriage, but she failed. However, even after she failed, these men, they turned up, they assaulted her husband, they gang raped her, and thereafter, Bhanwari Devi, she tried to file a case. She first tried to lodge an FIR. She went through incredible harassment at the police station. They sort of, first of all, they did not want to accept her complaint. Then they took her clothes as evidence, and they wouldn't let her spend the night at the police station even in that condition. So extreme harassment to go through just to file one sexual harassment case, one to file one sexual harassment FIR, in fact. And even at the end of it, when the case sort of went to the villages court, the panchayat, these people, they first said that because the Gujjars were upper caste people, they possibly could not have gang raped Bhanwari Devi, who was of a lower caste than them. And thereafter, they also made several other arguments, such as they were married and therefore they couldn't have done this particular act. When it went to court, the case eventually led to the formation of the Vishaka Guidelines, which is sexual harassment at workplace guidelines. And thereafter, this act came into force, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act. So the Vishaka case is sort of held up as a landmark case which established these rules, the sexual harassment guidelines. And the reason why it is Vishaka is because after Bhanwari Devi's case was sort of brought into the limelight, several other women who had faced sexual harassment, all of them got together and they filed cases too. And all of these petitions, they were clubbed into one name under the name of Vishaka. And that is what the case sort of became. It was Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. Just type it out in the chat box there. It's a very important case. Yeah. So Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. And that is what is sort of being referred to in this particular case. Now, what did the court say in this present case about the journalist and her tweets? The court's ruling: the right of reputation cannot be protected at the cost of the right of life and dignity of women. Right to reputation, in general, as per the Supreme Court, the right to reputation is an integral part of the of Article 21 of the Constitution. Further, Section 499 of the Indian Penal Code. So we talk about the IPC and the Criminal Code. It is not a restriction on the freedom of speech and expression because it ensures that the social interest is served by holding a reputation as a shared value of the public at large. So when we say someone is committing a crime, according to the IPC, we don't say they are committing a crime, we say they're committing a crime against society. So that is the purpose of the IPC being there. It is said that when a crime is committed, it is committed against society at large, and therefore that is why the state sort of takes up the initiative to punish the person who is a criminal. And it is why most criminal cases will look something like XYZ versus state of Punjab or state of Haryana, or XYZ versus the Union of India. So it's against a particular state or against India as a whole, because it's considered to be a crime against the society of the country and the state in general. Okay, so right to life, Article 21, I'm sure we know this. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. It confers on every person the fundamental right to life and personal liberty. Okay, right to live with dignity. Okay, before we move to the sort of next part, does anyone have any questions? Do I need to repeat anything? You can put it in the chat box if you want to like turn on your mics and ask. Okay. So I assume there is nothing. Yeah. All right. Ayush, do you have a question, or is that yes for like? I assume there isn't a question. Fine. Okay. Next, we'll move to this particular topic, doing uh, this thing, the right to live with dignity. Okay. So essentially, this is also covered under Article
मैम
21.
आयुष ने बोला रिपीट करने को.
Sorry. Repeat कौन सा part?
Last part.
Last part. Okay, the last part is, but okay, fine. Okay, so what I was saying is with these Vishaka guidelines, they were actually like conferred into the verdict, but it was taken into account in the verdict when the court was deciding on this particular issue. And in this case, the IPC section came up, right? IPC, the Indian Penal Code, section 499, which is for defamation. This particular section came up, and They said that like the prosecution essentially argued that it is a restriction on the freedom of speech and expression, but it cannot be a restriction. The court said that it cannot be a restriction because it ensures that the social interest is served by holding a reputation as a shared value of the public at large. Now what this means is that a reputation of any person affects society at large. So, like I was saying, when a crime is committed in the IPC, we don't consider it to be a crime against just one person. We consider it to be a crime against society at large. And because it affects society at large, all of these cases, it's mostly the criminals against the state or the union. So, you'll always see cases like, how do I put this? For example, there are very famous criminal cases of Anwar Ali versus State of West Bengal, State of West Bengal versus Anwar Ali. These are cases of detention from the time of the emergency. There are cases which we see every day, every criminal case. It's something versus the state or the Union of India, right? So that is what is sort of said in this paragraph, that it is a shared value of the public at large. So the duty of the state is to protect the public in general, society in general, from these crimes, and that is why the state sort of takes up the initiative to file a case against the criminal and thereafter take it forward. Right to life, I'm sure we know. Okay, with that, we will move to right to dignity. I hope the repetition part is covered. Okay, right to live with dignity. In Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, yet another landmark case, SC gave a new dimension to Article 21 and held that right to life is not merely a physical right, but includes within its ambit the right to live with human dignity. Okay, before I explain, does anyone know what happened in Maneka Gandhi? Does anyone want to try? Okay, I assume that's a no. Alright. So essentially, what happened is there was this woman called Maneka Gandhi, and she had just got her passport from the government of India, right? Now, at one point of time, all of a sudden, she received a notice from the government that her passport was going to be impounded for reasons of public interest or for public security. She wrote back to the passport office and they responded with the same reason, that they did not have to give any more reasons other than the fact that it was being done in public interest. So they did not have to give a proper explanation because they're sort of, again, a federal body and they didn't have to give a proper explanation. And so this Maneka Gandhi, she was obviously stopped from going out of the country because they took her passport. So she filed a case. And that became this particular case, Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. SC, the landmark judgment was that the right to live is not merely a physical right, but includes within its ambit the right to live with human dignity. So there were other verdicts too, which sort of became a part of this case, including the right to travel abroad, whether it is included within Article 21, so on and so forth. But at this point of time, we're just concerned with this particular right. Okay, so does anyone know what the golden triangle of fundamental rights is?
19, 21, 15.
14. 14, 19, 21. Okay, so what is 14, 19, 21? What are the articles? By what are the articles, I mean, what do the articles state? RT. Okay, sort of. RT is okay. RT is not 21. If that's what you're trying to say, RT is 21A. Does anyone know what articles 14, 19, and 21 are? Yeah, Gautam.
Article right to equality 14 to 18.
Right to equality 14 to 18. Great. उसके बाद 19.
Equality before law, the equality protection law,
14.
Article 14 होता है, और Article
19.
15 prohibition of the discrimination and guarantees religious, race, caste, sex, basement lot. 15 होता है और
19
आर्टिकल
बताओ।
ऑफ 19
19 और 21?
आर्टिकल 19 बोलते प्रोटेक्शन 6 राइट्स रिगार्डिंग द फ्रीडम ऑफ आर्टिकल 19 स्पीच एक्सप्रेशन peacefully without arms.
21?
21 to 21 right to elementary education.
नहीं. Okay. 21 is right to
They
life
protect the
and
life of personal liberty.
personal liberty. Okay, so please
हाँ,
ये चीज पे मत कंफ्यूज हो जाओ. 21 is life and personal liberty. 21A is education. 21 capital A, that is your right to primary education for children up to 14 years of age. ठीक है? Okay, great. So we have the answers. 14 is right to equality. 19 fundamental freedoms, 6 fundamental freedoms, right to speak, freedom of speech and expression, freedom to move freely throughout India, वगैरह वगैरह जो भी है 6 freedoms. And 21 is our right to life and personal liberty. So these are the 3 fundamental rights which are considered to be the holy of the holiest. And golden triangle, 3 are called the golden triangle, and that was also like put forward in the Maneka Gandhi case. Okay, with that we move on to what defamation is and just a brief of defamation itself. Okay, so a defamation can be both a civil wrong and a criminal offense, and the difference lies in the objects they seek to achieve. Okay, how do I explain this to you guys? Do you guys know the difference between a civil wrong and a criminal wrong? Yes, no. Does anyone want to try? Anurag, do you want to try explaining? Mic on, करके. Please don't type. Okay. I assume that's a no. चलो ठीक है. Okay. A civil wrong, break it down. ठीक है. Civil wrong is covered under different aspects of law, such as torts या contract law, if you guys have heard of it. Civil wrong में compensation देना पड़ता है. Most basic difference, civil wrong में compensation देना पड़ता है because civil wrong is considered to be a personal wrong. So for example, if we pick up something like trespass, ठीक है. Trespass also can be of 2 types, criminal and civil, but let's pick up civil trespass. I walk onto your land without any intention वगैरह नहीं आता है civil में, ठीक है. Walk onto your land ऐसे and I trample over some flowers. Civil wrong. Only your flowers have been affected. No one else has been affected. You have been personally affected and I have violated a duty of care that I owed to you as a normal standard civil person. ठीक है. इसके बाद क्या होगा? You are going to claim compensation for your flowers and you are going to get paid in court. Done? Civil. Now suppose you want to sue me for criminal trespass. What will happen? State will sue me. You essentially can't sue me. You file a report, state sues me for criminal trespass, state will put me in jail or ask me to pay a fine वगैरह वगैरह. There is no compensation का scene है. Here you are compensating a person, and here in criminal law you are punishing a person. Basic difference. ठीक है. Now tell me, does anyone know, can a person be tried for civil, tried under civil and criminal law together for the same act?
क्या पूछा मैम?
Can a person, मैंने एक कुछ किया, I committed some sort of act, can I be tried under both criminal law and civil law for the same act at the same time? Of course. Okay, there is one no and there is one yes. दोनों
No,
explain करो. हाँ, who is this? हाँ, yes गौतम, बोलो बोलो. Okay, Ayush, why is it no?
मैम सिविल लॉ तो प्राइवेट लॉ हो सकता है.
Civil law is private law, fair enough, but क्यों, why can I not be sued under both civil and criminal law? Can I be sued? Very important concept, don't get this wrong. Ayush, why is it no? and Milind, why is it yes? एक ही क्राइम दो बार कैसे पनिशमेंट हो सकता है? Okay, here is where you're sort of getting confused with the definition. We are not punishing for the same crime. Anything that happens which is considered to be a civil wrong is not a crime. मैंने इसलिए बोला कि I committed some act. मैंने तुम्हारे सर पे बॉटल फेंक दिया, ठीक है? That can either be a civil wrong under battery, ठीक है? When I am harming you and you want to file under civil wrong, that's battery, ठीक है? I'm violating your physical rights, that's battery. On the other hand, there is a criminal battery as well. Both are different acts. One is a crime, which is the criminal battery, and the other is not. Civil battery is not a crime. Okay. So you're not being sued for the same thing. You're being sued for two different things. Okay. Criminal and civil are two separate aspects. So it is not that you're being sued do bar for the same crime, but you're being sued for two different acts separately. Okay. So double jeopardy, जो double jeopardy का concept है कि you cannot be punished for the same crime twice. It does not come in because you're not being punished for one crime twice. You're being punished for a crime and a civil act. Again, you're not being punished for the civil act. You're giving compensation there. Do I have to repeat this? I feel like I have to repeat this. Yes, no. Anyone else? Do I need to repeat? Great. So, like I said, civil wrong tends to provide for a redress of wrongs by awarding compensation. So, compensation, monetary measures over here. Criminal law, on the other hand, seeks to punish a wrongdoer. So, jail mein dalo, fine, bail, whatever, all of that happens under criminal law. Two very distinct, separate laws. Okay. Now, laws for defamation. Criminal defamation, like we did, it was थोड़े चीजें याद रखेंगे. Defined under Section 499 of IPC. Civil defamation is based on tort law. Okay, and tort law does not have ऐसे. Does anyone have a question? Tort law doesn't have ऐसे statutes या IPC जैसे something. It is based on common law and precedents. Precedents are basically cases which have already been declared, the verdicts of which have already been declared, and the court sort of follows on to those verdicts. Okay, so tort law is just based on that. Ever increasing, it takes from ever increasing body of case laws and common law. So common law countries have put specific. England, Canada, Australia, all of these are common law countries, and we take on their laws because we don't have specific statutes for torts. Okay. How can defamation be done? Through words spoken or intended to be read. Spoken to बोल दिया ऐसे. Intended to be read could be चिट्ठी लिखा and you sent it to them for them to read. Through signs, self-explanatory, and also through visible representations. कुछ picture डाल दिया, poster डाल दिया. Criminal के लिए something that is very important is the intention of damaging the reputation of that person. So criminal law में one thing that we look at very, very majorly is intention. Okay, and it can only be criminal defamation if this sort of intention to damage the reputation of that person is present. Civil defamation mein we are not looking at intention at all. If you've done the act, you are going to pay for the act. Bas, that's it. Here, on the other hand, only if you know that you are doing the act or you have reason to believe that you doing that act will harm this other person, only then can you be held liable. This specific concept called, I'll type it on the chat box, called mens rea. Okay? Mens rea means a guilty mind. This is one of the qualifications that is required for holding anyone liable under criminal law. Okay? So, to sort of let the state sue and prove someone to be a criminal, you require mens rea. One of the most important things. It is not the only qualification for a crime, but it is one of the most important. Okay. Punishment. So, if you guys don't know, वो definition और punishment sections अलग-अलग होते हैं. Yes, mens rea and actus reus. Great. Actus reus is the act, mens rea is the guilty mind. So, guilty act and guilty mind both combined. Only if both are present can you hold someone liable under criminal law. Okay. IPC में definition section और punishment sections दोनों अलग-अलग होते हैं. Okay. So, section 499 जैसे is the definition of defamation. And on the other hand, 500 is the punishment section, which reads simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine. First, okay. And for example, this will happen in a lot of cases. So 299 is murder ka definition section, 302 is punishment, 300 is punishment as well. Okay. Constitutional validity of criminal defamation law. Just remember the name of this case, Subramaniam Swamy versus Union of India, 2014 ka case. Okay, with that, are there any questions before we move to the next topic? Okay, I assume not. Okay, please go through these like 2 paragraphs and then we'll start with this topic. Okay, cool. Start करते हैं. Very few key points to remember from this topic. National Urban Digital Mission (NUDM) has been launched by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs (MOHUA). This is like जैसे represent करते हैं ministries को in short form. Okay, who is the Union Minister for Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs? Amit Shah for Housing and Urban Affairs. Okay, anyone else? As far as I knew, it was Hardeep Singh Puri for both Union Minister and Minister of State. For some reason, you guys are saying it's Amit Shah. Okay, fine. I'll get back to you on that then, whether it's Amit Shah or Hardeep Singh Puri. Fine. Okay, so they've launched it along with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The rest we don't have to remember, but remember the names of these two missions, which is very obvious: Digital India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. About the NUDM, National Urban Digital Mission, it will be a shared digital infrastructure for urban India, working across the 3 pillars of people, process, and platform. So, people as in citizens, process, how it is being done, platform, the platform that the government is giving through this particular NUDM. Yeah. Okay. And ये याद रखना है कि delivery in cities by 2022 and across all cities and towns in India by 2024. Significance of NUDM, just going to remember 2 things. First, inherits the technology design principles of the National Urban Innovation Stack (NUIS), and ये याद रखना है Indian Urban Data Exchange or IUDX. So it is something that has been developed in a partnership between the Smart Cities Mission with IISc Bengaluru. Okay, so data exchange, of course, very obvious from the name itself, exchange of data. So IUDX has been developed for that particular purpose. Remember the full form and just like which institute it has been developed in tandem with. Okay, other than that, not much to remember here. We'll move to the next topic then if you guys don't have any questions. This is Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat. We've gone from Swachh Bharat to Swasth Bharat. Okay. Please read this in 1-2 minutes and then we'll start. Okay. So recently the Prime Minister talked about the need to address health issues in a holistic manner. I am not sure what holistic manner means in this context, but I'm sure the Prime Minister knows. Okay, need to address issues in a holistic manner and to adopt a four-pronged strategy for a healthy India that includes implementing this particular scheme called the PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat. Yeah. Four-pronged strategy: prevention of health and promotion, prevention of illness and promotion of wellness. I'm so sorry. Prevention of illness and promotion of wellness, including measures such as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which somehow we've come back to that again. Okay, providing cheap and effective treatment to the poorest of the poor, second, increasing the quality of health infrastructure, third, and working on a mission mode. So four different strategies, four-pronged strategy. To overcome obstacles like Mission Indradhanush has been extended to the tribal and far-flung areas of the country. Okay, just a small question in between. Who's the health minister right now? Union Minister for Health? Harshvardhan. Yeah, very obvious answer. Okay. Harshvardhan is the Union Minister for Health. Okay. PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat scheme announced in when we need to remember this Union Budget 2021-22, and these are the sort of aims which we don't need to remember in great detail. But ये याद रखना है what the duration of this particular scheme is. Duration is 6 years. Okay. National Center for Disease Control (NCDC). Please remember the full form of NCDC and do not get it confused with CDC if you're watching shows and stuff. Okay. Expansion of the integrated health information portal to all states or union territories to connect all public health labs. So essentially these are again part of some of the aims, and they want to help in rolling out the COVID-19 vaccination program as well as strengthen the delivery system and build better capability and capacity to combat any future pandemics. Okay, what are the two vaccines that India is manufacturing right now? Sorry, what are the three vaccines that India is manufacturing right now? Very recently in May, we have received lots of another vaccine that we've got permission to manufacture. Great. Covishield, Covaxin, and Sputnik. So if you guys don't know, in May we've received a shipment of, I believe, 1 lakh doses of Sputnik, and or it might be 1 crore, 1 lakh or 1 crore doses of Sputnik, and thereafter we are going to start manufacturing Sputnik once those doses have been administered. So currently India is manufacturing three vaccines: Covaxin, Covishield, and Sputnik. Okay. Other initiatives in the health sector: Ayushman Bharat program. Just remember the names of these: Ayushman Bharat program, National Health Mission, and Jan Yashudi Yojana. Different complicated names they put to these things. Jan Aushadhi Yojana, so public medicine mission, basically translated. Okay, with that we'll move to the next topic. Please ask questions if you have any, otherwise we'll proceed. Okay, please read this in 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll start. Okay, let's talk about this topic. President's rule in Puducherry. Okay, what is president's rule? Does anyone want to explain first? Very basic thing. You guys should be knowing this by now. Guys, what is a president's rule?
मैम प्रेसिडेंट रूल्स इमरजेंसी रूल बोल सकते हैं ना
Emergency rule for country, state, किसके लिए emergency rule है? Okay, president's rule, also very commonly known as a state emergency. Right. President's rule has been imposed in the Union Territory of Puducherry on the recommendation of the Lieutenant Governor. So, generally, President's rule can only be imposed on the recommendation of the Governor. And when there are certain situations that arise when a President's rule can be imposed, the most common is a complete breakdown of administrative machinery, a complete breakdown of machinery in the state in which the government cannot work. This can either happen like it happened in Puducherry when the established government lost power during a vote of confidence. So, vote of confidence is something that I'm sure you guys know. It's used to impeach the prime minister, but it can also be used in these contexts to see if the government has a majority in a floor test and to see if a government can pull through with a government. Like, that statement sounded contradictory. So, to see if a certain party can pull through with being the government of any sort of state. Okay, the president was satisfied that a situation had arisen in which the administration of the Union Territory of Puducherry could not carry on in accordance with the provisions of the Government of Union Territories Act 1963, which is Act number 20 of 1963. Not that relevant, but just remember it. Okay, this is important to remember. Administration of Union Territories is in Article 239 to 242 of Part 8 of the Constitution. Okay, Article 239 to 242, please remember which articles govern Union Territories. On that note, can someone tell me what Part 3 of the Constitution consists of? Part 3 and Part 4 respectively, what do they consist of? Guys, I've discussed this several times before. Part 3 and Part 4. Okay. What articles are the fundamental rights? 3 consists of fundamental rights. Yes. What is Part 4? Okay. Part 3 is fundamental rights. Part 4 is not state policy, but DPSP's directive principles of state policies. Okay, fundamental rights are from Articles 12 to 35. DPSPs are from 36 to 51. Please remember these because they will 100% connect it to some question as soon as a question of the Constitution arises. Okay. Parliament can make laws on any of the 3 lists for the Union Territory. Please remember this, very important. Union list, state lists, concurrent list. Generally, only the Union can make laws on the subjects in the Union list, and the state can make laws on the subject in the state list. However, the concurrent list, both Union and state can make. Further, please remember that if there is a certain topic in the concurrent list that both the state and the union have jurisdiction over, the union's jurisdiction will get preference with respect to the concurrent list. Okay. Provision in case of failure of constitutional machinery as per the 1963 Act. So, like we're saying, President can receive a report from the Lieutenant Governor. So, Administrator of the Union Territory is the Lieutenant Governor. And a situation has arisen in which the administration cannot work or like it cannot function properly. Thereafter, the President may by order suspend the operation of all or any of the provisions of this Act for such period as he thinks fit. and he may make such incidental and consequential provisions as may appear to him to be necessary or expedient for administering the Union territory in accordance with the provisions of Article 239. Okay, now I'm not sure if it's going to work, but either ways, let's talk about the articles about for the emergencies. So there are 3 articles for 3 different emergencies. Can someone tell me what the articles are? What are the articles for the emergencies, guys? Saurabh, what is 352 for? Okay, 352, 356, also an emergency. Third one, it's not 368. I assume no one else wants to try. Okay, when you're remembering articles for emergencies, please remember that they happen at gaps of 4, 352, 356, and 360, right? 3 different articles for 3 different emergencies. 352 is, does anyone want to try?
National emergency.
National emergency, great. 356,
President rules.
356 president rule, and 360,
Financial emergency.
great. Okay, 3 different emergencies like Gautam has said. 352 national emergency, 356 state emergency or president's rule, 360 financial emergency. Please remember that we have never had a financial emergency, so financial emergency has never been voted in, that's 0 times. And with that, let's talk about this thing. General, like parliamentary procedure, you don't have to remember everything, but mostly remember this, that a president's rule must be approved by both houses of the parliament within 2 months from the date of its issue. And it is initially valid for 6 months and can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years, again every 6 months. So you cannot extend for like 3 years at one time, but you can extend it for 6 months, and as it continues with every 6 months you can extend it to a total of 3 years. Okay, now few commissions and judgments on president's rule. Okay, just remember the committees and the commissions and their dates. Okay. Administrative Reforms Committee 1968, Raja Bannar Committee 1971, Sarkaria Commission 1988. This is actually very relevant. Sarkaria Commission said that 356 should be used rarely and only when like there's an extreme breakdown of constitutional machinery in the state. S.R. Bomai. S.R. Bomai versus Union of India. Again, judgment for president's rule and restricting the scope of president's rule actually. So Supreme Court sort of set out certain conditions and qualifications for situations in which a state emergency or president's rule could be used. And one such situation is that of hung assembly. It's where general elections to the party. After general elections to the assembly, no party secures a majority. So if any of you guys live in West Bengal, I think you must know that this was one of the situations that the BJP claimed would happen. They said that we would have a hung parliament in Bengal because like TMC or BJP either wouldn't be able to secure a majority. We didn't have that eventually, but yeah, that is what the concept of a hung parliament is. Okay, Justice V. Chelia Commission, 2002. Just remember the names and the years. And the Punchi Commission, 2007. Recommended for amendment and sort of protecting interests of the state. Okay. Furthermore, just in this context, because I said recommending for amendment, I remembered about the Law Commission report. So please know that the Law Commission can only recommend amendments or changes, and everything else will have to sort of be put through the parliament, and the parliament will have to decide whether they want to amend that particular thing or not. So Law Commission reports only have this particular advisory role or recommendatory role. Yeah. Okay. We'll move to this other topic if we don't have any questions. Okay, I assume we don't have any questions, so please read this in like 2 minutes and then we'll start. Okay, great. Oh, I think it's just 1 minute, so just wait for 1 minute. Okay, so like the topic very self-explanatory. China was India's top trading partner in 2020. According to provisional data from India's ministry, I don't know why Google Doc is moving around so much. Okay. According to provisional data from India's Commerce Ministry, China regained its position as India's top trade partner in 2020 despite high border tensions between the two countries. Okay, don't need to remember the figures, but just remember top trading partner. And China has replaced USA. So China is the largest commercial partner, displacing the US bilateral trade India has in the middle of the COVID pandemic. Nothing else to remember here. Okay, trade deficit, bilateral trade gap. Does anyone know what a trade deficit is? Like, is anyone a commerce student? Does anyone know what a trade deficit is? Exports and imports difference, and how many imports are more than exports is called. Correct. Okay, so essentially, trade deficit is because a country will have both imports and exports, right? And imports is when you're spending a certain amount of money, exports is when you're sending out your goods to other countries for them to buy. So, exports will give you income, imports will cost you. So, at the point of time when the imports exceed the exports, so when your cost exceeds your gain, or how do I put this? It exceeds your profit from exports. At that point of time, you'll have a trade deficit. So, like we can see here, trade deficit or trade gap, it is the amount by which the cost of a country's imports exceeds the value of its exports. Okay, not much else to remember here. Just taken to reduce important import dependence on China. So we had this recent ban, like on over 100 apps, TikTok, PUBG, whatever got banned, and they sort of cited national security reasons and increased scrutiny. So decision to keep Chinese companies out of 5G trials. So we're of course looking at upgrading from 4G to 5G now, and Chinese companies are not being allowed to do it. So more or less these normal things. Uh, does anyone have any questions? I don't think like this was a very like difficult or nuanced topic. But if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll start with this media platform in 2 minutes once we read. Okay. Media platform. Okay. Australia has reached out to India among several countries, including Canada, France, and the UK, in a move to stitch a global coalition against tech giants Google and Facebook amidst a face-off over compensation for sharing news content from media companies on their platform. So essentially Google and Facebook have been in trouble for a really long time now, starting with the Zuckerberg like trials they had in the USA with sharing of election data. Here in India, we have had complaints of sharing personal data in general, and now they are amidst this particular debate about sharing news content from media companies. So Australia has this proposed law. Please remember the name of the law: News Media and Digital Platforms Mandatory Bargaining Code Bill 2020. The bill is expected to set a precedent in regulating social media across geographies. So this is not that important. This is just the aim of the bill. But the name of the bill, please remember. Okay, not much else to remember from this particular topic. It's a very like arbitrary topic. Yeah, I think there's nothing particularly important. Okay, we'll start with India's Energy Outlook 2021 IEA. Give you 1 minute to read. Okay, so I think it's important. Fine. International Energy Agency, again, please remember full forms for CLAT, IEA. They have released the India Energy Outlook 2021 report, which explores the opportunities and challenges ahead for India as it seeks to ensure reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy. So I think I've explained the concept of sustainable energy before. So essentially, we're looking to sort of gain any sort of energy, any form of energy, whether it be fuel or electricity, any sort of thing which can allow us to sort of sustain the environment for a longer time. ये चीजें याद रखनी है. Third largest energy consumer by 2030, India will make up the biggest share of energy demand growth at 25% over the next 2 decades, as it overtakes the European Union as the world's third biggest energy consumer by 2030. Okay, so this is kind of significant because you have to remember that the European Union, it has 28 countries, right? So 28 countries together do not consume as much energy as India will by 2030. Okay. So India's energy consumption is expected to nearly double as the nation's gross domestic product (GDP) expands to an estimated USD 8.6 trillion. This is fine. You don't need to remember the figures, but just remember that it is expected to double. Okay, what is GDP? I think I had explained GDP before, but what is GDP? Okay, total number of goods and services produced in a country in a year. That is the better definition. Particular area products. No. Okay, I think you're getting confused with this thing GI tag. Yeah, that's a GI tag. Okay, total number of goods and services produced in a particular area, particular country. Sorry, particular country in a year that forms the GDP of any country, and essentially GDPs are very important because they sort of show the potential of that country in pursuing any sort of economic or financial project. Okay, small things to remember here about the IEA specifically. Okay, IEA is an autonomous intergovernmental organization established in 1974 in Paris, France. IEA mainly focuses on its energy policies, which include economic development, energy security, and environmental protection. 3 E's of IEA. So they've sort of put this in a format where they call it the 3 E's: economic development, energy security, and environmental protection. India became, this is important to remember, when did India become a member of the IEA? India became an associate member of IEA in March 2017, but it was in engagement with IEA long before its association with the organization. Recently, India has linked a strategic partnership agreement with the IEA to strengthen cooperation in global energy security, stability, and sustainability. Okay. With that, are there any questions before we move to the next topic? For some reason I can't see the text. switch on your mics if you have. Please go through this in like 1 2 minutes. And this is the last topic we'll take up today. Because I have 10,000 submissions and assignments coming up, so end class a little early. Okay. Ceasefire along the line of control or LOC. Okay. So India and Pakistan have agreed to observe the 2003 ceasefire agreements along the line of control (LOC). So let's just remember this, that most decisions are taken by the Director Generals of Military Operations of both countries, so the DGMOs. Okay, 2003 ceasefire agreements. The original ceasefire agreement was reached in November 2003, 4 years after the Kargil War. So that was 1999. We had a war with Pakistan then, 1999. 2003 ceasefire agreement remains a milestone as it brought peace along the LOC until 2006. Between 2003 and 2006, not a single bullet was fired by the Jawans of India and Pakistan. So post 2006, that's when the trouble started. By both India and Pakistan, actually, there were ceasefire violations both with shelling and with bullets, वगैरह. It's like normal violations which we see almost once a month nowadays. But yeah, several signs indicate that back channel diplomacy led up to the talks and helped produce a joint statement between the two sides. So this is important that they're trying to resolve the Kashmir issue peacefully. Earlier in the month of February 2021, this sort of came up. And Pakistan has supported India on international levels sometimes, and India allowed the aircraft carrying Pakistan's Prime Minister clear passage to Sri Lanka. So he was going to Sri Lanka to declare some international developments, essentially. And with that, let's talk a little bit about the line of control. So the line of control, or LOC, emerged from the 1948 ceasefire line negotiated by the UN after the Kashmir War. It was designated as the LOC in 1972 following the Shimla Agreement between the two countries. LOC is demarcated up to the Siachen Glacier, highest battlefield, world's highest battlefield. Okay. Does anyone know what the India-Pakistan border is called? It has a specific name. It's not Redcliffe, but yeah, close enough. It's Radcliffe. Okay. Yeah, Radcliffe line. Okay. And what about India-China, since we are already discussing it?
McMahon.
Yeah, McMahon, and there is one more as well. Yeah, I think it's Afghanistan and Pakistan. Okay, there is another line between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Does anyone know that? Okay, anyone else? Okay, just remember the names of these three like border lines, which are sort of military borders more than like practical borders. So India Pakistan Radcliffe line, India China McMahon line, and Afghanistan Pakistan is actually the Durand line. Yeah. Okay. Not much else here. India China hotline we'll take up in the next class, or whoever takes up the next class, because we have exams from June, so I assume someone else will take up the next class. Okay. Are there any questions before we end the class? Anything? Okay. I assume no. Okay. If you guys have questions, please feel free to text me or mail me, whatever. I assume you guys have both. Yeah. Okay. I'll see you guys in the next class whenever that is. Please take care and stay safe.